And right now, we're going to turn to our next presentation, all about attackers' perspective, as well as the method used by hackers will be discussed alongside real-life examples by this person to my left. It's Yves Pellaton, who is Senior Security Consultant and Team Leader at Sec Consult. Let's give a big round of applause for Yves.
Thank you. Good afternoon, welcome. First, I will shortly introduce myself as well as Sec Consult. So, as been already said, I'm Senior Security Consultant by Sec Consult, also team leader, working there for 4 years almost. Got some certifications in the offensive side of cybersecurity, let's say it like that. We are based in Zurich in Switzerland, a little bit more than 20 people. Strong footprint in Europe, but we also have offices in Asia, and we have customers mainly located in the North Hemisphere. We have different services, so we have quite a bright experience in the hacking field, let's say it this way. So web application, mobile application, IT infrastructure, and so on. We are also doing red teaming. I will say a few words about it a little bit later, because we like to differentiate things a little bit. We also have sec defense, what happens when everything has failed previously, trainings, and so on. So, I think what makes Sec Consult mostly known, and this worldwide, is really linked to our vulnerability lab. Here you can see every brand's product where we could identify 0 days and where we had responsible disclosure discussion with those brands, let's say it this way, in order to have a better, a safer world, let's say it this way. Few words regarding the attackers. Really very shortly, we can separate them in different categories, let's say it this way. Script kiddies, mainly people who don't really have a deep understanding technically of the things, but they are looking for some reconnaissance to get something done, let's say it this way. Activists, big threat, because whatever you are doing, whatever you are thinking, whatever your company is doing, whatever its business is, you will always meet people who will not agree with that, and some of them will go one step further than what's legally allowed. Very often underestimated internal threat. I think we all know somebody who is not satisfied with his current salary or position in a company. Sometimes those people can also go one step further and perform illegal things. We hear a lot about it, organized cyber criminal gangs. There are also very well-structured groups delivering software, can be ransomware, can be delivering services like phishing campaigns, selling informations, list of emails with maybe also password with that. Very difficult to go against them. They have a lot of resources. Nevertheless, a big issue. Competitors, we are in Switzerland, not a so big country, but we are very innovative. Therefore, many people would like to know what we will develop in the future, and therefore maybe international competitors will want to come into our network in the company to check what are the next products that will be launched there, and so forth. And finally, we always hear about them. Nation states can be USA, can be Russia, China, North Korea, India, Israel, and so on and so forth. They are also very well organized, a lot of resources, big budget to develop their offensive skills. So this is against what we have to fight to have a secure environment. Finally, always this balance between the attacker and the defender, it's a big challenge. They will choose the weakest point to get in. You have to defend against every point. They can play dirty. They are not following the law from the beginning, while on defending side, you have to follow the law. It's always a challenge and can be an issue. Very uneven fight at the end. So everything is happening with a process. Like it or not, there are good processes, bad processes, but everything is related to a process. And here we'll shortly look at the typical steps when a large organization will be hacked. Three main phases: initial phase, attack phase, and final phase. The first one, planning. It's always important. What are the technologies we have? What are the resources we have? What do we want to achieve? Being a good white hat hacker or a bad black hat hackers, you need to have those questions answered before starting. Then external reconnaissance. Is there any RDP port open toward the internet? Do we have SMTP server that may be wrongly configured, or 365, and so on and so forth? Getting the most information as possible at the beginning will allow to plan the first steps of an attack. Based on this information, based on this initial phase, then we move to the attack phase. Weaponization. What do I need? Phishing campaign, mail servers, maybe malicious documents. Then initial compromise. What happens when the person clicked on the link, for example? And then it's a circular process. Privilege escalation, internal reconnaissance, and then lateral movement till the goal is reached. And at the end, we have the final phase, exfiltration. Even in case of ransomwares, now data are exfiltrated to be sold on the dark web or sold back to the owner of the data. And we have our process completed. Now, just one word regarding red teaming. This is what the hacker community and we by SecConsult also call red teaming. A web application pentest is not red teaming. A phishing campaign is not red teaming. The whole process here is a red teaming. You have people, process, and technologies that will be evaluated. This is what we call red teaming. So, back to our process, and now let's have a look to our hacker perspectives. Can start to discuss about phishing campaigns, something that we hear very often, and that's still an issue in 2022. We all have seen phishing emails, and we have to say that when it's a targeted campaign with spear phishing, really targeting some dedicated person within a company, it's more and more difficult to identify this one. Here we have an example of a phishing campaign we prepared for a customer where, of course, you need to check what information is available on the internet. Maybe a new manager, maybe a new contract that has been won over the last weeks, days. Using that in your phishing email, saying, yeah, congratulations everyone, it's with you that we could succeed to that. Now it's important, GDPR or whatever, please sign the document, fill in the document, that we can move on. We don't want to lose the contract because you did not do your job right now. Time pressure is important. People will try not to think too long, act. Here we can see doc file, maybe it's not that nice, but who knows, maybe somebody will click on that. It's important to realize, it's a tool used by attacker, but when we do a phishing campaign, it's just a way to measure the awareness of the employees within a company. It will not improve anything at the end, but you get this picture at this time point. How many people did click on the document, did download the document, and how many did run the macro who was in it. Here, not a bad example, honestly. What, 10% downloaded the document and only 4% ran the macro? Not that bad, definitely not. Just remember that just one compromised employee or computer is sufficient for APTs or experienced hacker to have a step into the organization, be able to move laterally and increase their privileges. There is also kind of belief that MFA will solve all those issues with phishing campaign. That's not true. Conventional MFA will not allow to go against that. In case of transparent proxy, an attacker can intercept the username, the password, and the MFA code. We use it maybe, or just get the token when it comes back from the server and use this session to move on. So, let's come back to this picture now. Phishing campaign. These are the phases that are evaluated in an attack when we speak about phishing campaign. External reconnaissance, we need to get information to have something fishy, interesting, that people will click on it. Weaponization, you need to build your email, your infrastructure, whatever, and then initial compromise, and the test stops there. This is phishing campaign. We can think about physical intrusion in the same way. We spoke about phishing, physical intrusion. When I go to a customer with my USB stick or with my microcomputer, it's exactly the same steps that will be involved. External reconnaissance, where can I get in? Do they do a breakover midday? Is the door still open at that time? And so on. Get in, plug it in, getting out, and we are here. So, same phases, different ways to do it. Something also very important that we did not discuss till now is applications. Applications. A lot of different possibilities. Can be mobile application, Windows application, ERP solution, where you will store all your confidential information about your customers, your employees, and so on. Web application, it's important to know that in 2020, 25% of the data breaches that happened started with web application. 25%. So, beside social engineering, applications are the most used way to get to confidential data. Okay. Let's have a look more deeply to web applications. They are most of the time internet facing. That's the purpose of web application. They can contain confidential information in huge databases. We always hear about data breaches where customer information have been stolen, then they are sold on the dark web and so on. And here we can see some example of the latest pen test we did for web application. What can go wrong when you have file uploads possibilities in your web application? In worst case, it's a remote code execution, so you compromised fully your server, and that gives the first step into your infrastructure for the attackers. Something more conventional, but also quite often underestimated, cross-site scripting. With cross-site scripting, you can do a lot of things. Everything that you can do with JavaScript, you can do it with cross-site scripting. Mobile application, there I could not find a neutral example from one of our customers that will not be recognized as soon as you will see it, so therefore just the OWASP first page. But here, we have seen over the last 2 years, we work more and more remotely. That has good aspects, but also bad aspects. And everything that can be done in mobile application, currently we try to do it. Can be for expense management, for time management, for approval processes, and so on. That's awesome. That gives a lot of flexibility to everyone, and honestly, I think most of us are happy with that. But that are new attack vectors to gain access to company's network. So therefore, it's also very important that those are tested. Another kind of applications also. This one very complex. When we speak about ERP and SAP, for example, I said previously, it stores a lot of confidential information about the employees, about the customers, about the Lieferant, yeah, okay, and so on. That means if you have an issue, a misconfiguration there, it will be very likely a critical one, because critical information will be leaked. And here we have an example. If the user knows how to start the debug mode just by putting /h there on the top, and he's allowed to do that, and then get access to the user 02 table, then he got all the password hashes. Downloading that, going offline, performing a brute force attack against that offline, and maybe coming back with administrative credentials. That's something that is possible, and therefore in SAP very critical. But don't let anyone without good experience testing SAP infrastructure. The risk to have data corruption or data loss is very high. Take people who have experience with that, except if you really want to test if your data can be deleted. And that's the outcome you expect. So this is regarding applications. And when we do one step back and look at the wall, hackers will always try to test, to verify if you have outdated applications with known vulnerabilities. There are very good online databases with proof of concept to attack those vulnerable systems. Exploit DB is here as an example. And they will also try to bypass any system with authentication, authorization, trying to get more than what they are supposed to have. There are a lot of different tools that exist. Something that is very well known by many is also Metasploit. You have good collections of proof of concept, of exploit to get into system and infrastructure. Now we can come back to our processes, and now we are a little bit further right in our processes. We are speaking about the initial compromise and the privilege escalation. When you do an application pen test, audit, it's what you will evaluate. And that's interesting because we always discuss more and more about bug bounty. And bug bounty, it's exactly the same field in this process. That does not mean that I see a bug bounty as competitor to a pen test. I think they shall happen at two different time points. If you go live with an immature application on the web, you will have trouble, even if you have a bug bounty. Just realize that bug bounty will pay approximately 10 times less than if you sell the vulnerability on the dark web. Many people will try to help you, but not everyone. And the likelihood that somebody will sell it on the dark web instead of announcing it to you exists. So start maybe with a pen test. When it's mature, go to a bug bounty. That makes sense. It's definitely a good tool to ensure the quality and the security level of your application, but just good to have that also in mind in this whole process. So let's do one step more, internal infrastructure. A lot of different names, DMZ, backup, management, and so on. All subnet that we can have in an infrastructure. Sometimes they can be very flat, sometimes micro-segmented. It has advantages and disadvantages in all cases. But when we start to discuss about Kerber roasting, ADCS issues, and so on, that are sometimes very straightforward way to get domain administrator in an Active Directory infrastructure, for example. Can use a lot of different tools to identify those potential ways. Bloodhound is known by many, I think, but yeah. And here also some examples of one of the latest infrastructure assessment we did when standard users got access to a share where you can find VHDX files. It's maybe not that nice. They can download them, analyze them offline. Once again, you can have EDR solution or whatever. They can do that on their own system, on their own environment. And you will for sure have secrets there. So password hashes in the LSAS session of whose machine that has been backed up and so on. Here you can see when you can get access, even with EDR solution, where you can get access to something like that, administrator, local administrator, you get a hash. So this one a little bit hidden. And there is password reused on different server, then maybe you gained also at the same time access to a more critical server with session of domain administrator. Why not? That's something that happens quite often. And at that time, domain administrator, it's what you get as a role, and you can start to encrypt the whole infrastructure or exfiltrate the data that are considered confidential. Now, regarding our process, we are at the very end. We are here. We got access into the infrastructure. Then it's a matter of privilege escalation, internal reconnaissance, lateral movement till the goal is reached. Good. So, when everything went wrong for a company, then we still have last solution called digital forensic and incident response. So, and here, from a hacker perspective, it's also something interesting. I said something about Bloodhound earlier, and here it's something that we see more and more. Now the blue teams, defenders, also use those tools to see if there is any potential path to domain administrator. If after a breach, they can detect something there that allowed the attacker to move on to reach their goal. But also, we always hear about C2 infrastructure for red teaming assessment. It's also something now that the blue team is using. An example, Velociraptor. You have a centralized server that will control all your requests. You can deploy your agents through group policy, for example, at the same time into your whole infrastructure. And from there, which machine is online? What is the CPU load? Do I have any indicator of compromise on those? Looking once through all the agents, getting the answer, and you can be very fast to go against the attacker that are still within your environment. So that brings me to the end of it. Hacking is not a crime. Often in the mind of different people, you can think, oh, he's a hacker, he's doing illegal things. No, that's not true. Hacking is really a way to think, a way to live for some of us. And I really think hackers can provide a lot of very useful information regarding security postures of companies. They will, if they have the time, always find a way to reach their goal. That's really something that hackers like to do. They stick to their goal and they will try everything to reach them. If it's a white hat hacker, everything legal. If it's not, then maybe going on the illegal way. It's also something very important. You cannot find one person that knows everything in depth regarding cybersecurity. I think it's humanly not possible. My opinion can be against that, but I really think that. But there is a very strong community for the hackers, and they will always be able to go there, ask questions, and very often they will get the answers, and that will allow them to move fast forward. Because hackers like to share information. It's not to disappoint companies or something like that, just because they want to move forward and to allow everyone to move forward with them. So, they think differently, they act differently, and they can propose other way to get to something. When you want to sensibilize somebody about the usage of password managers and MFA, we know those corporate PowerPoint slides that explain you have to because and so on. But Rachel Toback, well-known social engineering hackers, had another idea, and this one showed that hackers are different.
There once was a kid whose passwords laid across all sites. They were the same. A criminal then found their fame by taking that data to go. Soon may a criminal come to steal your pictures and data and run. One day when the crime is done, they'll steal your account and go. The kid then noticed strange behavior. There had been a login failure. Whose password was their traitor? It was already known. Soon may a criminal come to steal your pictures and data and run. One day when the crime is done, they'll steal your account and go. Now our friends quickly learn their lesson. Don't reuse passwords. Turn on two-step and swirl. A password manager encrypted wherever they go. Soon may a criminal come to steal your pictures and data and run. One day when the crime is done, they'll steal your account and go.
So, hire a hacker.
Thanks to Yves. That song is going to be in my head all evening.